It began on a quiet Thursday evening, one of those nights where the world feels calm, almost too calm, under the illusion that danger only exists on television screens. But in the shadows of a small neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio, a single decision, a reckless impulse, a moment of rage, would unleash a chain reaction so destructive that generations would feel its shockwaves. Because crime doesn't just take lives, it shatters bloodlines, destroys trust, corrodes hope, and leaves families drowning in questions that never find answers. And when the truth finally surfaced, one chilling reality remained. Nobody escapes the fallout when violence is unleashed. Nobody. Content is for awareness and educational purposes only. Viewer discretion advised. The story begins with Marcus Hill, a 19-year-old kid with a quiet face, an aching heart, and a dangerous habit of bottling everything inside. His mother worked 2 jobs, his father was long gone, and his younger sister looked up to him as her hero. But the streets had a different nickname for him, Shadow, a boy drifting too close to the wrong crowd in East Cleveland. On the other side of the story was Evelyn Carter, a single mother with 2 children, and the kind of smile that made neighbors feel safe. Their worlds should never have collided. They were supposed to remain strangers. But crime has a way of forcing innocent people into the crossfire of someone else's chaos. It happened on March 18, 2014, a night when anger met opportunity. Marcus, desperate to impress older gang members who treated him like property more than family, agreed to confront a man over a stolen phone, something Marcus himself didn't even believe was worth a fight. Yet the pressure of belonging, the craving for validation, and the quiet fear of being seen as weak pushed him deeper into a darkness he didn't fully understand. When the confrontation spiraled into panic, Marcus pulled the trigger. The bullet didn't hit the intended target. It tore through the air and struck 10-year-old Lena Carter, Evelyn's daughter, who had been standing by the living room window helping her brother with homework. The sound of that gunshot didn't just pierce the night. It pierced a mother's dreams, a family's future, and a young man's soul. And in the hours that followed, both households, one grieving a child, the other losing a son to the criminal justice system, would begin a descent into emotional devastation that no apology, no sentence, and no time could ever truly heal. Because crime doesn't only create victims, it creates broken circles, haunted memories, and grief that echoes across generations. But what happened next, after the police lights dimmed and the community mourning began, revealed how crime reaches far beyond the moment it occurs. As Marcus was taken away in handcuffs, crying and shaking, his mother collapsed in the driveway, screaming his name. Neighbors watched as 2 families were destroyed in a single moment, one by loss, the other by consequence. And as the media arrived, the city would soon learn this was not just another incident. It was a tragic, painful reminder of how fast life can fall apart when crime enters the picture. Yet behind the headlines, inside the silent living rooms, in the places cameras couldn't reach, the real story, the emotional story, was just beginning. Because as the days unfolded, Evelyn's heartbreak turned into a search for answers, while Marcus's mother battled the torment of loving a son who made an unforgivable mistake. 2 women, 2 mothers, both victims in different ways, would come to face the same agonizing truth. One moment of violence can ripple outward like a poison, destroying everything it touches. And just when the community thought the tragedy had reached its peak, another revelation would rip open wounds, expose secrets, and challenge everything people assumed about guilt, innocence, and responsibility. Because crime is never as simple as headlines make it seem. It drags everyone into its storm. But what exactly did investigators uncover in the days that followed? What hidden details about Marcus's life, and Lena's final moments, would shock even the seasoned detectives? And how did one heartbreaking discovery push both families to the edge of emotional collapse? If this story has touched you so far, kindly comment, "Families deserve better." Share this painful truth with everyone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVC and turn on notifications so you never miss real, emotional, chilling stories that expose the hidden cost of crime. The neighborhood woke up the next morning to a suffocating silence, one that felt heavier than the police tape fluttering in the wind. On East 112th Street, the air itself seemed wounded. Neighbors gathered on porches, whispering, replaying the night in their minds, but nobody felt the weight more than Evelyn Carter, who sat on her living room floor staring at the dried bloodstain near the shattered window. Her son, Caleb, sat beside her, trembling. He hadn't spoken a word since the paramedics carried Lena's small, lifeless body out of the house. His silence screamed louder than anyone's tears. Across town, in a holding cell with flickering fluorescent lights, Marcus Hill sat alone, hugging his knees to his chest. His hands still smelled like gunpowder, a scent he would never forget. The shock had hardened into dread. He replayed the moment over and over, the argument, the shouting, the panic, the misfire, the scream. He had never meant to kill anyone, least of all a child. But remorse didn't change reality. In the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the public, and in the eyes of the devastated mother on the other side of town, he was now a killer. Not a misguided teen, not a boy caught between pressure and fear. A murderer. Police interviews began immediately. Detectives questioned Marcus about gang affiliations, names, motives, the real target. But Marcus couldn't speak. The words twisted in his throat. He thought of his mother, Renee, crying in the police station lobby, begging officers for updates and asking if she could see him. She kept repeating, "My son isn't a monster. Please, he's not a monster." But the officers wouldn't let her in. Protocol. In Evelyn's house, grief turned into a kind of numbness. Friends brought food she couldn't eat. Church members filled her living room, praying softly, laying hands on her shoulders. None of it brought her daughter back. She kept seeing Lena's smile, wide, warm, missing a front tooth every time she blinked. Her baby girl had been planning her 11th birthday party. She was supposed to start a dance class next month. She had dreams, and in a split second, those dreams were ripped away. The community erupted. Local stations broadcast the story repeatedly. 10-year-old girl killed in drive-by style shooting. Social media exploded with anger, opinions, judgment. Some called Marcus a heartless criminal. Others blamed the system that failed to redirect him sooner. Meanwhile, his family faced threats, insults, even vandalism. Someone spray-painted "baby killer" on their fence. The ripple had begun. The hardest part came when Evelyn had to identify Lena's body. The cold, fluorescent lights of the morgue, the metallic smell of disinfectant, the soft instruction from the coroner. "Whenever you're ready, ma'am." She grabbed the metal edge of the table to steady herself before lifting the sheet. Her scream cut through the building. It wasn't just grief. It was a sound that carried generations of pain. Detectives, meanwhile, discovered something Marcus didn't know. The man he confronted was never involved in the stolen phone situation. He was innocent, which meant the entire tragedy had sprung from a lie. The older gang members had set Marcus up, using him as a disposable pawn. They wanted to see how far he'd go, whether he had the heart to join them fully. He failed their test, but he passed their threshold of destruction. And when police tried to track down the older boys, the streets went silent. No one snitched. No one identified names. Marcus was left alone to carry the weight of a crime engineered by people who abandoned him as soon as consequences appeared. News reached Marcus's mother through a detective. "Your son didn't act alone, but he's the only one cooperating." Renee broke down in tears. She wasn't crying because her son was innocent. She knew he pulled the trigger. She cried because he had been preyed upon. Her boy had been used, manipulated, thrown away by men old enough to know better. But none of that eased Evelyn's agony. Her world was divided into two parts, before the bullet and after. She didn't care about gang politics. She didn't care about pressure or manipulation. She cared about the empty bed in her daughter's room and the echo of a laugh that would never return. Just when detectives thought they understood the full picture, a deeper, more devastating truth surfaced, one that exposed a terrifying pattern in the neighborhood and linked Lena's death to a series of crimes stretching back months. And it raised a chilling question. Was Marcus just the beginning of something much bigger, something planned, something darker? If this story has pierced your heart so far, kindly comment, "End violence now." Share this narrative with those who need to hear the truth. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVC, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional, shocking, and gripping real-life crime stories. The night deepened around him, but inside Daniel's chest, something finally began to rise. Not anger, not fear, not the exhaustion that had been eating him alive. It was clarity, a slow, trembling clarity, the kind that only comes when a person has cried out all the tears, shouted all the questions, and finally sits in the stillness where God begins to speak. Behind him, the city was loud. Inside him, heaven was opening. Daniel lifted his eyes toward the distant skyline. Lagos, quiet in the distance like a giant that had fallen asleep. Cars hummed, lights flickered, and far below, life continued. But something in him whispered, "Not you. Not anymore. You don't stay broken here." A soft wind brushed across his face, as if God himself was sweeping away the dust of regret. Then, that moment. That unmistakable moment when the truth finally speaks louder than the pain. Daniel realized he had survived what was meant to destroy him. He had endured what others never made it out of. He was still standing, and that itself was a prophecy. He remembered every betrayal, every disappointment, every door slammed in his face. But instead of hurting, the memories now sharpened into meaning. He whispered, "Lord, was this all part of you redirecting me?" A weight lifted. A new weight settled. The weight of purpose. Because sometimes God doesn't answer with a shout. He answers with a shift. And in that moment, Daniel felt it. The shift. The one that tells a person, your story is not over. Your ending has not yet been written. And your next chapter will not resemble your last. His shoulders straightened. His breathing steadied. His spirit rose. Slowly but surely. Daniel didn't have all the answers, but he had one. It was time to get up. Not emotionally, not mentally, physically. He stood, as if rising was his first act of rebellion against everything that tried to bury him. He wasn't walking away from his pain. He was walking toward his purpose. And heaven whispered above him, "Good. Now you're ready. Now I can lead you." Daniel walked back toward the dim streetlights, not with the heaviness he carried earlier, but with a new steadiness in his steps. It wasn't confidence. Not yet. It was something quieter alignment. That sacred moment when a person stops fighting the season they're in and starts listening to what God is shaping inside them. Every breath he took felt different. Every step sounded like a declaration. As he moved, memories surfaced not to torment him, but to remind him of the patterns he had missed. Every betrayal had redirected him. Every loss had taught him. Every delay had preserved him. And suddenly, it all made sense. God wasn't punishing me. He was positioning me. He stopped at a small intersection, one of those forgotten corners of the city, where a single streetlight flickers like a heartbeat. That's where the realization crashed into him. He had been praying for breakthrough, while holding on to places God was trying to release him from. He closed his eyes, tears not of sorrow this time, but release. Daniel whispered, "Lord, if you're moving me, then move me fully." If you're closing the door, then lock it behind me. And that sincerity, that complete surrender, became the turning point. Because heaven responds fastest to a yielded heart. In that he had one. It was time to get up. Not emotionally, not mentally, physically. He stood, as if rising was his first act of rebellion against everything that tried to bury him. He wasn't walking away from his pain. He was walking toward his purpose. And heaven whispered above him, "Good. Now you're ready. Now I can lead you." Daniel walked back toward the dim streetlights, not with the heaviness he carried earlier, but with a new steadiness in his steps. It wasn't confidence. Not yet. It was something quieter alignment. That sacred moment when a person stops fighting the season they're in and starts listening to what God is shaping inside them. Every breath he took felt different. Every step sounded like a declaration. As he moved, memories surfaced not to torment him, but to remind him of the patterns he had missed. Every betrayal had redirected him. Every loss had taught him. Every delay had preserved him. And suddenly it all made sense. God wasn't punishing me. He was positioning me. He stopped at a small intersection, one of those forgotten corners of the city. It didn't come as a sentence. It came as a knowing, a direction, a quiet pull on the soul that said, "It's time to rise." He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He didn't fight the old chapter anymore. Instead, he allowed himself to stand in that sacred pause, the space between who he had been and who he was becoming. Across the quiet street, dawn began to tease the horizon, painting the sky with faint strokes of gold and violet. The night that had felt endless was now giving way to a new morning. And Daniel realized, night never wins. It only delays the sunrise. A soft smile touched his face, the kind that appears when something finally clicks, not externally, but deep in the marrow of the heart. His pain hadn't been pointless. His suffering hadn't been wasted. God hadn't abandoned him for a single second. Every step of breaking had paved the road to becoming. He looked toward the skyline, not the one filled with lights and noise, but the one that symbolized promise, calling, assignment. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel behind. He felt prepared. He whispered, steady and sure, "Lord, I'm ready for whatever you wrote for me next." At that moment, it wasn't the city that changed. It wasn't his circumstances. It wasn't the people who hurt him. It was Daniel. Something inside him had shifted permanently. The version of him shaped by fear, heartbreak, and uncertainty had been replaced by a man grounded in identity, sharpened by adversity, and strengthened by grace. He felt a sense of holy momentum, the kind that tells you your footsteps are now synchronized with heaven's timing. And as he took his first step into the new dawn, the spiritual atmosphere around him changed. Heaven wasn't watching him anymore. Heaven was walking with him. The road ahead wouldn't be perfect. It wouldn't be painless, but it would be purposeful. And Daniel knew, without hesitation, that everything he endured had pushed him here, a place where faith became his compass, where wounds became wisdom, where endings became beginnings, where night turned into unshakable morning. He didn't look back again. He didn't rehearse the betrayal. He didn't replay the disappointment. He didn't mourn the chapters that closed. He carried only what mattered: clarity, strength, purpose, Christ at the center. As sunlight finally crowned the horizon, Daniel stepped forward, not as the broken man who entered the night, but as the renewed man walking into destiny. And the heavens whispered again, "This is the rise I prepared you for." Fade out. End of episode narrative.